Leo M. Rogers. If, according to Scientology, the state of clear persists into future lives, would the same happen with the OT levels? Has the church, or would the church, ever recognize someone as a past life OT? If I joined and started recalling the Xenu story in an auditing session, what do you think would happen, presumably, if the auditor hasn't reached OT3, they couldn't react to that without admitting they have read the OT materials? Okay, this is very similar to a question I answered earlier about somebody giving the clear cognition in the middle of a session. If that were to happen, right? Yes, Scientology does recognize and look for past life clears and past life OTs. If, OT is above the state of clear. So, certainly if somebody had attained the state of clear in an earlier life and could be recognized for that in this lifetime, then the same would apply for people who are past life OTs. And of course, they're only going to be, if somebody's saying, hey, look, I think I was a past life OT, they're going to be dealt with eventually by somebody who is OT, who's going to know the information, and so know what to expect to hear from that person. If somebody were to come into Scientology and start talking about the Xenu story in an auditing session as though they were recalling it, from earlier auditing that they'd had. In other words, if they sounded legitimately like they were doing this, not just walking in there and goofing around or playing around, but actually in an auditing session, then that would probably be taken fairly seriously. There are a number of security check questions that get done and things like that, looking into that get done in order to verify if a person is legitimately a past life OT. And they would want, your name, for example. They'd go look for any folders that had that person's name. That wouldn't necessarily be a point that, if they couldn't find any folders, if you said, yeah, my name was Joe Jackson, and they couldn't find any folders for Joe Jackson, they wouldn't say, well, you're a liar. But they would do the search for Joe Jackson's folders, is what I'm saying. That's part of the procedure. Hubbard wrote bulletins and instructions for how to deal with somebody who's had auditing in a past life. And almost every Scientology parent thinks that their kid is a returnee. Like, I'll just one for one, they just think that, right? You can even, on my interview with Tim and Sylvia DeWall with Larissa, they even talk about that. They thought for sure she was, somebody who'd come around again. So that sort of thing happens. Now, if the auditor, of course, didn't know anything about OT materials and stuff, and you say, yeah, I think I got some OT auditing in the last life. Let's say you're in an auditing session and you're with somebody who's not OT as the auditor, right? And you go, yeah, I think I was OT, and I think that this is what we covered. The auditor would actually say, actually, hold up. Now, because I'm not OT, I would prefer that you actually not tell me these things right now. But what we're going to do is after session, you are free to write down anything you want to write down as to what you're recalling or what's happening that makes you feel like you've had past life OT auditing. And we'll get that to a properly trained case supervisor who, in your folder, and they'll be able to evaluate your information, right? But I'm not OT, so I can't hear anything about that. So just go ahead and keep that to yourself right now. And that would be the common sense handling that an auditor who's not OT would do with you in the auditing session, because he doesn't want to hear about the Xenu story. Whether he's heard about Xenu on South Park or not, he doesn't want to hear about it, right? Because, that would potentially endanger him, is what he would think. As a Scientologist, he would think that, he was actually in some kind of spiritual or emotional, danger if he's exposed to those OT materials before he's ready for it. So you would get some special treatment, and that information would go to a case supervisor who knew what he was talking about, and that would eventually get all looked at, and then they would determine what to do with you. So all of that is accounted for within the world of Scientology.